It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the box. How about them Tigers? They get the series win over the number one ranked Texas A&M Aggies, winning game number 1 6-4, game number 2 6-4, jumping out to a 3-0 lead in game number 3, looking for a sweep. Ultimately, the wheels fall off in the 5th inning. LSU ends up losing that one 14-4. So, yes, Sunday turned into a dud. There's no other way around it. And Game 3 continues to be a bit of an issue. Not a bit of an issue. Game 3 continues to be an issue for LSU in 2024. But, look, there is no other way. Like, I want to be clear. There is no other way to feel about this baseball team coming out of this weekend than great. They played awesome for the majority of this weekend. There are so many positives to take away, and we'll go through them all. And we'll talk about the negatives as well, but that is just, that flips your year right now. Like, it does. You have to keep going. You have to follow it up now, right? You have to go take care of your business in Tuscaloosa, take care of your business against Ole Miss to close out the regular season. But a win like that, a series win like that, flips the entire perspective. It flips the math that we've been talking about for LSU. LSU now has a legitimate chance to get to 13 conference wins in the regular season, and they'll be in if they do that. So we can touch on that a little bit today as well. But y'all, we've talked about it for the last, 3 weeks or so, that they're playing better. And you saw that on full display for the majority of this weekend, and it resulted in them beating the number one team in the country 2 out of 3. And, you saw it all. You saw some good starting pitching. You saw excellent relief from your bullpen. You saw some timely hits, some timely clutch hits for LSU throughout the weekend. So there's a lot of positives. I do want to actually go through game number 2 in some detail, considering I did not do that in our immediate reaction to that game on Saturday night. So we will go through that game maybe a little bit deeper than we normally would in the full weekend recap, because there were some awesome moments that I do want to highlight. And then, of course, we'll go through game number 3. So y'all smash the like button if you haven't already. Get subscribed up to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Get subscribed up on your favorite podcast app if you haven't already. Follow me on all the social medias. It's greatly appreciated. And let's dive right into it. Let's actually start with game 2. So, look, you come off of game 1. It was a massive win, and that opened the door for you to win the series. LSU was not going to win the series if they did not win game 1. And Gage's jump was great. Not great. He gave you just what you needed. And, I'm sure Jump would tell you he would have loved to have not given up the 3 solo homers, but he didn't walk anybody, and that was massive. You had the great relief from Fidel Ulloa and Griffin Herring. You had the clutch hit from Josh Pearson, and then from Steven Milam, a sac fly from Hayden Travinski, and that gave you your margin of victory. And then you go into Saturday with Luke Holman, and you feel really good about that. And it got off to a rocky start for Luke Holman, y'all. Rocky start for Luke Holman. Walked 3 in the first inning, loaded the bases multiple times. Ultimately, Texas A&M puts up a 3 spot. And it could have been really easy for Luke Holman to fold right there and say, it ain't my night against that lineup. That's an uphill battle, but he didn't. Luke Holman settled in. He comes back in the second inning, strikes out the side. I think that was part of 4 straight strikeouts for him. Strikes out the side and really kind of settles in. You get to the third inning of that ball game, and LSU's able to match A&M's 3 spot in the first with their own in the bottom of the third. Tommy White, solo homer. Jared Jones follows that up back-to-back with the solo homer, and then Josh Pearson doubles down the line in right field. And all of a sudden, second trip through the lineup against Justin Lampkin, LSU seeing it, and they're hitting the baseball. And then Hayden Travinski follows it up, 4 straight hits for LSU, a single. That scores Pearson and tied the ball game. So, look, the guys you count on, your veterans, they came through for you in that spot at the second time through the lineup. White, Pearson, and Travinsky. Hell, Jones is a sophomore, but we'll consider him a veteran considering all the action that he's seen and the time that he's played. Now, what was massive was the top of the fourth. What do we always talk about? We always talk about the shutdown inning after LSU takes a lead or, ties a game. You needed the shutdown inning. And I'll tell you, it didn't get off to a great start. Single to the shortstop, then a wild pitch, then 2 walks. That loads the bases. But then Luke Holman, another big tip of the hat to Luke Holman, strikeout, strikeout, strikeout. Of the 9-hole, 1-hole, and 2-hole hitters. So you're looking at Targach, who's played a lot of ball for A&M, on 3 pitches, bam, you're gone. You're looking at Grahovac on 3 pitches, bam, you're gone. And then Jace Laviolette, 3 more pitches, bam, you're gone. Not only did he strike out the side with the bases loaded and nobody out, he did it on 9 pitches. That was massive, and it hung the all-important 0 after LSU tied the ball game. You go to the 7th inning, and that's where LSU would ultimately finally take the lead. It was a wild pitch that scored Alex Milazzo. In the bottom half of the 8th inning, LSU would add 2 more runs to the total, a single from Alex Milazzo up the middle, and then Tommy White would single up the middle as well. That was how you got to your 6 runs. LSU made it interesting in the 9th. Obviously, man, Christian Little, we're going to get to him. He was just rolling right along. And then in the 9th inning, did give up the single to Laviolette that scored a run. That made it 6-4, which ultimately was your final margin. Justin Luer came in to face Braden Montgomery, who's a switch hitter, but LSU obviously liked him on the right side much more because they flipped him over there every time they could this weekend. They did that. Luer gets the ground ball he needs, but it's an error by Braswell at shortstop that extends the game. But you bring in Gavin Guidry. He throws 3 pitches, gets the fly ball out, and you win the series. There were just so many key moments. And look, Saturday played out just like Friday's game. And it played out just like we talked about. When we laid out the plan, said, I feel good that Holman and Jump are going to pitch well. It was going to come down to your bullpen. Could you limit this A&M offense? Because you weren't going to keep them down. Like, you weren't going to shut them out. You weren't shutting down this Texas A&M offense. Nobody is. But could you limit them, and specifically in the bullpen, and then find your timely hitting? Like, Holman, Jump, give you a chance, pitch well, have you in the game when they leave. Both of them did that. Both of them, let's see, it was 5 innings for Holman, so it was tied 3-3. You absolutely have a chance. You were down 1 when Gage Jump left in the 6th inning on Friday night. Turn it over to your bullpen. Can they hold the line? They absolutely did that. Like we said, whether it was Ulloa and Herring on Friday night or Christian Little on Saturday, they absolutely did that, and your offense picked them up. Your offense rewarded your bullpen for doing that and got the timely hits when they needed it. And ultimately, that was the blueprint, and it worked. And a major hat tip to those guys. Christian Little. Y'all, we have talked a lot about Christian Little on this show, specifically this season. Even preseason. I sat here and I told y'all I thought Christian Little was a big key to this team. LSU is deep on the mound. We know that. They had a lot of left-handers. Could you find a right-hander to emerge? And you found a couple, actually. But Christian Little is one of the guys we highlighted. Because the results, I get what they have been so far in his college career, but the stuff is just undeniable. He was up to 98 miles per hour on Saturday night. 6 strikeouts for him. He had 4 in a row. Like, he had a string of 4 strikeouts in a row as well. And the big key, 1 walk. 1 walk in 3 2/3. And when we talked about him preseason, when we highlighted Christian Little, the thing we mentioned was the walks. And we pointed to his sophomore year at Vanderbilt because it was a comparable inning total for him sophomore year at Vanderbilt to what he did in 2023 at LSU. The difference were the walks. He had a career high in walks at LSU in 2023. he walked 17 in like 38 innings at Vanderbilt as a sophomore and had an ERA of like 3.6. And it's like, okay, yeah, you'll take that every day from Christian Little. The walk number has been awesome for him so far this season. And it was again on Saturday night. The stuff is just crisp. The pitch mix they're using is crisp. It flows great, and he's executing it. And right now, he looks like an absolute weapon for you down the stretch, and that is so massively important to be able to bring out a right-hander with, 4 or 5 pitches out of the bullpen who, oh, by the way, can get up to 98 miles per hour. Yeah, that, you'll take that. That plays, as they say. So, Christian Little, major unsung hero of this weekend for LSU. He was awesome. I'll tell you another thing that LSU did great this weekend and why I think they had why they had so much success against Texas A&M's lineup. They held Braden Montgomery hitless. Like, there's not going to be many weekends that kid does not get a hit. He was 0 for 13 with 6 strikeouts against LSU over 3 games. And that is massive. We likened the combination of Laviolette and Montgomery hitting back-to-back to Cruz White last year for LSU, and how that was just such a cheat code. I'm willing to bet we could go through last year every box score, and we would not find a weekend where either Dylan Cruz or Tommy White went 0 for the entire thing. And that is a major reason LSU's offense was so good last year. So they have the same thing, and you held one of their superstars hitless. Now, yes, he impacted the games in other ways. He drew some walks and whatnot, but no hits. That's massive. He didn't drive in any runs either. So the leading RBI guy in the SEC and a guy who came in tied for the team lead in homers with him, you held him hitless. That was, and at the top of the order, absolutely massive, and a job well done there by LSU. So that's a major positive. If we go to Sunday, man, look, LSU got off to such a great start in this ball game, and it felt different because Game 3 has been a problem for them. And for them to jump out to the 3-0 lead was great. I love that you saw Nate Ackenhausen. It's great that he's healthy. That's the great sign. Was he his sharpest? Was he his crispest? No, 44 pitches in an inning and 2/3. He didn't even make it through the lineup once, but it's fine. He got you off to a good start. He hung zeros, your first 0, actually in the first inning all weekend. So, check a box there. And then in the bottom of the second inning, LSU gets a big swing from Brady Neal. And I loved that it was Brady Neal that came up with that big hit. A leadoff walk to Pearson after a Travinsky strikeout, and Neal hits the 2-run homer. Brady Neal has quietly put together a nice season. Like, it hasn't been great, but it's been a nice year. It's definitely one that you're going to look back on when we go into the offseason and say, man, that's something he can build off of and take the next step in his draft year as a junior. Brady Neal getting hurt last year stung. And I think ultimately, if he could have played the entire season, you would have seen him develop and really come on strong late and probably put up numbers similar to what he's put up this year. Brady Neal's hitting around 271. He's got 8 homers. Like, it's not a great season. It's not an all-America or all-SEC season, but it's probably what you expected from him as a freshman last year. And given the time he missed, this is kind of like his freshman year. So watching him do that and seeing him get the big hit there in a conference game, that was massive. And I think if he can really turn it on down the stretch, now that he's healthy again, can you see him really catapult himself into next season? That's something to just look at going forward, but I did want to highlight that with Brady Neal. And then in the bottom of the third inning, Josh Pearson, another clutch single up the middle, to score a run with 2 outs with 2 strikes. He's just been awesome. Like, this is his time. Like, this is the time that Josh Pearson comes alive and succeeds. It's late in the year, down the stretch, or just in the clutch spots. Like, they on a team when you have Tommy White and Jared Jones and Hayden Travinsky and all these guys, there's nobody else they'd really rather up at the plate in those spots than Josh Pearson, because he's just proven it time and time again now in his 3rd year here that he's more than capable of coming through in that spot. They trust him so much, and it's rewarded. Man, I thought Sam Dutton gave you some really good relief on Sunday. They just left him in the game too long, and that was really disappointing. Like, that was a miss by Jay and Yeski. It just was. They were not going to pull Dutton until they got the lefty-lefty matchup with Jay Slavielette and Justin Lohr, and that stinks. Like, that just does. Because Dutton didn't have it anymore, and he gave you everything he could. His line looks a lot worse than he actually pitched. And, I mean, I'm sure Jay will probably tell you that, look, put those runs on me, I'll take them, and that's absolutely correct. Because, I mean, Dutton was giving up rockets at that point. But before then, he was awesome. Like, I mean, he was the model of consistency that we know he is, throwing strikes, mixing pitches, to both sides of the plate, all the things that Sam Dutton could do. They just left him in too long. And I get the lefty-righty thing, from an analytical standpoint and whatnot, but man, when you got a guy out there that's struggling and you're winning and you have a chance to sweep the number one team in the country, you can't just wait around for the lefty-righty matchup. Not after a kid like Dutton's giving you everything he had in those, previous 2 innings or whatnot to hold the line, to keep putting up zeros, to go through this tough lineup. That stung. We talked a lot about putting your foot on their throat, like stepping on their throat when you had the chance. You could have done that there. But you didn't, and it allowed the inning to spiral out of control. And you can say, well, Musso and Justin Lohr came in, he struggled, and he did. He did. So maybe he wouldn't have executed well anyway. But I still would have liked to have seen them make that move quicker. I thought that was a miss. I thought that was a misstep by them. And on a weekend they didn't have many, that was definitely one of them, and it led to a 9-run inning. And that was your worst pitched inning of the entire series. I mean, out of the 27 innings you played, you pitched poorly in 2 of them? I know the 9th inning on Sunday was a 5 spot, but the game was decided by that point. It didn't actually matter. But it's there, so I guess we'll throw that in there. We can't just erase it. So we'll say 3 bad innings. That's a major step in the right direction. Against that lineup, major step in the right direction. And you should feel great about where LSU's pitching staff is heading. It's just tough for them in game 3s because, you go all in to win those first 2, as they should, with their arms. And you just haven't had the consistency from certain guys that you're going to have to count on game 3. Like, it was disappointing to see Thatcher Hurd struggle with his command as much as he did on Sunday. Because, I mean, look, that's a guy that LSU he's got to come along for LSU this year. He does. He has to. For LSU to make any type of run in the postseason, they need Hurd. They need Thatcher Hurd, just like they did last year, to emerge and be a guy, whether it's in a starting role, whether it's at the back end of a bullpen, whether it's middle relief, I don't care. They need that guy to pitch in their most meaningful games. Just like last year. Like, that does not change. He's got some of the best stuff on the team. He's got to figure it out like he did last year. So yes, that was disappointing. I actually thought Aiden Moffett was a bright spot on Sunday. He came in and got you out of that inning, the 5th. It took him a minute to do it, but he got you out of it, and then he really settled in and gave you 3 1/3 shutout. So that's a bright spot. Like, to watch LSU give up the 9 spot in the 5th sucked because it felt like you had all the momentum. You had, kind of dominated the series to that point, and you're up 3-0 through 4, looking for the sweep. You're there. Like, you've got the momentum, and you give up the 9 spot. But then Aiden Moffett gives you the 3 1/3 shutout and gives you a chance. He gives you a chance to mount the comeback. They couldn't do it. Chris Cortez was really, really good for A&M. He struck out 6 and 4 1/3. But that's a big grow-up moment for Aiden Moffett in that spot for LSU. 100%. Because, I mean, you go to two guys that you feel like you should lean on and trust in Lure and Hurd. They both struggle, and you throw Moffitt in there. He gets knocked around, but gets you out of that frame and then holds the line. Unfortunately, you just, you couldn't put the at-bats together to get yourself back into the ball game. But a major hat tip to Aiden Moffitt. Thought the slider looked really good from him. And, I mean, obviously the fastball, I mean, look, he can run it up to the, upper 90s. So that's, again, because he had a rough outing in the midweek against Grambling. He's the one who gave up the 2 runs. So to see him bounce back like that against the lineup like Texas A&M, that was huge. And he can be somebody you can count on, obviously, going forward down the stretch. So, y'all, look, there's really nothing but positives for me from this weekend. I did not think LSU was going to take 2 out of 3. I told y'all that. I will own that. I've never been happier to be wrong about a prediction, because when you looked at LSU, when they were coming off that Tennessee sweep, after they got swept to Tennessee, I should say, they sat at 3-12 in the league, and you knew you were going to have to go 10-5 down your final 5 series to get to 13 wins in conference play, which with LSU's RPI and things of that nature should be good enough to get them into the field without really having to do anything extra in Hoover. But you saw 2 series on the schedule that made you second guess that from being possible. And it was A&M, and it was on the road at Alabama. Well, you took 2 of 3 from A&M when you weren't supposed to. Now can you go do it against Alabama? You do that, you're going to be in good shape. That's what this did. It totally flipped the math to where you can look at this now and go, yeah, they can get there in the regular season. Maybe they don't. Not saying they will. They got to go follow it up. And we'll talk a lot about a letdown effect for LSU here this week coming up. But, hot damn, that was great. This is my main takeaway from this weekend for this team. And this is why I'm so encouraged. This is why you can be encouraged after they lost by 10 to close the series. Early in the year, LSU showed you they could play with anybody. Right? Like they were right there for 3 games against Arkansas. They played Tennessee close. They had 2 gut-wrenching losses to Florida and to Vanderbilt. But they were in the game. So you knew they could play with anybody. LSU showed you this past weekend against Texas A&M that they can beat anybody. And that's encouraging. They're learning how to win. They're learning how to win those tight games. And I look back at that one, they beat Auburn. Game 2, and they beat Auburn when they walked them off. They needed to learn how to win that type of game. They showed it against Auburn. And they showed it again against Texas A&M. They've always been able to play with anybody. Now they've shown you they can beat anybody. So when I look at this and I go, man, yeah, can they make a run? Sure, they can. But it'll be up to them to continue to improve. They're playing better. We've talked about it over and over and over again. And now you've seen it against elite competition. I did kind of get into this a little bit on the live stream Saturday night. This is probably the only thing of value that I've mentioned on that. But I've sat here and said it a lot this year. When LSU's had success, I don't care who it's against. Because you can't just overpower your opponent in baseball, right? It's a game of execution. It's a game of finesse. It's a game of mental fortitude. It's all of that. Your opponent doesn't dictate that. Their skill level doesn't dictate you being to execute and throw strikes or you being able to get the timely hit or things of that nature. You still have to throw strikes. You still have to hit the round ball with the round bat. You can't just line up on the ball and run it up the middle down somebody's throat because you have a size advantage on the line. That's not how baseball works, right? You can't just outrun somebody up and down the court because you're faster than them. It's not how baseball works. It's such a game of precision. And you could start to see that coming for LSU against Tennessee. You just didn't win anything. But then again, against Missouri and Auburn in your midweek games. Now you've seen it against what was the consensus number one team in the country. They can beat anybody now. And that's a great feeling to watch. That's a great feeling to have, and it builds confidence for them, and it's great from a fan perspective because now you believe that they can beat anybody, and that makes watching them down the stretch a lot better. So massive hat tip to them. We'll get into the math a little bit deeper, of course, on a future episode as we do. But that was a great weekend for the Tigers, y'all. That was a great weekend for the Tigers against Texas A&M. So let's go, man. Let's go. You got 2 weeks left, one more midweek. We'll have you locked and loaded here on Musso at the Box, wall to wall. So y'all stay tuned. Get subscribed, like, share. Get subscribed on YouTube. Get subscribed to your favorite podcast app. All of that greatly appreciated. Thanks for tuning in, and be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.